First story. I divorced my husband, believing he is not good enough for me. He accused me of being abusive and manipulative. Now he is enjoying his life with his new girlfriend, and I'm here, abandoned and regretting my choices. It's been 2 years since my ex-husband walked out of my life, and honestly, I still don't know how to feel about it. Some days, I think I'm finally over it. Other days, I see something that reminds me of him, an old picture, a mutual friend's post on Facebook, and all the feelings come rushing back. Lately, it's been worse. I found out a few weeks ago that he's not just doing well without me, he's thriving. Big promotion at work. He's gotten in shape seriously. When did he start running marathons? Oh, and of course, he has a new girlfriend now. Because of course, he does. The thing that really gets me is how he looks. Happy. Like genuinely, effortlessly happy. I don't know why it bothers me so much. Shouldn't I be glad he's doing well? Isn't that what people are supposed to say about their exes? I wish them the best? I try to tell myself that. But every time I think about him moving on, it just stings. And honestly, it's not just the moving on. It's the fact that he told me during one of our final arguments that I was the worst person he'd ever been with. He said I was clingy, controlling, manipulative, even abusive. I still can't get those words out of my head. Was I really that bad? Or is this just his way of rewriting the story to make himself look better? I'll admit, I wasn't perfect. But no one's perfect, right? And it's not like he was some flawless husband, either. I'm not here to bash him. But he wasn't exactly the easiest person to be with. He was quiet and distant at times, and it always felt like he was holding back from me, even after years of being married. I mean, I'm his wife. If I can't ask him for more of his time and attention, who can? Let me explain a little about us. We were married for 6 years, together for 8. I met him when I was 24, working as a receptionist at a dental office, and he was 28, already working in finance. I thought I'd hit the jackpot. He was calm, stable, and patient, everything I thought I needed. He made me feel safe. But over time, that same calmness started to feel more like indifference. I've always struggled with feeling like people are going to leave me. My dad left when I was little, and my mom, well, let's just say she wasn't exactly the nurturing type. So yeah, maybe I was a little needy in our relationship. But can you blame me? I just wanted to feel like I mattered to him. For example, he had this thing about needing space. Like, he'd go out with his friends every Friday night, and I was supposed to just be okay with it. I wasn't always invited, and even when I was, I felt like he didn't really want me there. He'd say he needed time to decompress, but I couldn't understand why he needed time away from me. Isn't marriage about doing life together? If he wanted space, it felt like he was pulling away from me. So yeah, I'd call him a lot when he was out. Or I'd text him to check in. It wasn't because I didn't trust him, I just needed reassurance. I know I could get a little upset if he didn't respond fast enough. But that's because my mind would go to all the worst places. I'd think, what if something happened to him? What if he's with someone else? I wasn't trying to be controlling. I just cared so much. I remember this one time when I saw a text pop up on his phone from a coworker. It said something like, "Thanks for the help today." But it bugged me. Why was she texting him after hours? Wasn't that crossing some kind of line? I asked him about it, and he got so defensive, saying it was nothing. I didn't believe him at first, so yeah, I checked his phone a couple more times after that. But again, that wasn't about him. It was about me. I've been cheated on before, and I couldn't handle the thought of going through that again. He said, I was always accusing him of things he didn't do. But that's not fair. I wasn't accusing him, I was asking questions. If I saw something that didn't sit right with me, why wouldn't I bring it up? Isn't that what you're supposed to do in a relationship? Communicate. Then there were the fights. He said I turned every disagreement into a blow-up, but that's not how I saw it. I just felt like I had to fight to be heard. He'd shut down every time I brought up something that bothered me. Like, I remember one time he came home late from a work dinner and didn't even text me to let me know. I was worried sick, but when I tried to talk to him about it, he acted like I was overreacting. I got mad, sure. But wouldn't you? The thing is, I know I have my flaws. I've always been a little hot-headed, and I don't always think before I speak. But I was dealing with so much back. Then my mom was going through a rough patch. Work was stressful, and I was still carrying all this baggage from my past. I tried to explain that to him, but he never really got it. He'd just say I needed to work on myself, like that was some easy thing to do. When he told me he wanted a divorce, I was blindsided. I mean, I knew we were having issues, but I didn't think it was that bad. He said he couldn't take it anymore, that he felt like he was walking on eggshells around me. I didn't even know what to say to that. I thought we were supposed to work through our problems, not just give up. And now, here we are. He's out there living his best life, and I'm not. I feel like I gave everything to that marriage, and it still wasn't enough for him. So, Reddit, I need to know. Am I really the villain in this story, like he says? Was I too much? Or did he just not try hard enough to understand me? I've been through so much in my life, and I was just trying to build something stable, something real. Doesn't that count for anything? Comments. Comment 1. YTA. Your ex didn't thrive after the divorce because he's rewriting history. He thrived because he's finally free from you. Constantly checking his phone, tracking his location, and blowing up when he didn't give you 24/7's attention. That's not love, it's control. Your past trauma isn't an excuse to treat someone like a prisoner. Get into therapy before you ruin another relationship. Comment 2. YTA. You weren't just asking questions or caring too much. You were smothering and paranoid. No one wants to live under constant suspicion because of your trust issues. He wasn't distant. He was trying to survive being micromanaged. Stop blaming him for not trying harder and take accountability. Therapy. Now. Comment 3. YTA. Your ex isn't the villain, here you are. He set boundaries, and you steamrolled over them with your insecurity and paranoia. Checking his phone, constant accusations, exploding over nothing. You weren't his wife. You were his warden. If you don't fix yourself, this cycle will repeat. Therapy is your only way out of this mess. Update. Hi Reddit. I just wanted to come back and say thank you to everyone who commented on my original post, even the ones that were harsh, and there were a lot. Reading your replies was a huge wake-up call. I'll admit, it was really hard to hear at first. My gut reaction was to get defensive and insist that you were all wrong, that I wasn't the problem. But as I kept rereading your comments, I realized there were some things I couldn't ignore anymore. You were right, I was the problem in my marriage. I didn't want to see it before, but now I can't unsee it. I was controlling, paranoid, and emotionally overwhelming. I let my past traumas dictate my actions, and instead of dealing with those issues, I dumped all my insecurities on my ex. I made him responsible for my happiness and constantly tested him to prove his love, which wasn't fair to him. The phone checking, constant accusations, and guilt tripping. That wasn't love, it was fear and control disguised as love. It hurts to admit this, but my ex was a good man, and I took him for granted. He wasn't perfect, but he didn't deserve the way I treated him. I see now that he wasn't distant or indifferent. He was probably just exhausted from trying to keep the peace. I accused him of giving up, but the truth is, I pushed him to that point. He left because I gave him no choice. I've spent the past few days reflecting on everything, and I'm owning my part in the divorce. I've also taken steps to start working on myself. I've booked an appointment with a therapist to address my trust and abandonment issues, because I don't want to carry this baggage into another relationship. I need to learn how to be okay with myself and stop seeking constant reassurance from others. I don't know if I'll ever fully get over the regret I feel about how things ended with my ex, but I hope one day I can forgive myself. I also hope he's truly happy now and living the life he deserves, even if it's without me. Thank you, Reddit, for giving me the reality check I desperately needed. It wasn't easy to hear, but it was exactly what I needed to finally face the truth. I've got a lot of work to do, but I'm ready to start. Second story. Entitled Parents Disowned Me at 16 for being pregnant, harassed me, and called CPS on my baby until CPS itself stopped reacting to their calls. Now, 10 years later, they are reaching out, wanting to reconcile and have a relation with my daughter. I am very sorry if this is convoluted and riddled with grammar and spelling mistakes. At 16, I slept with my good friend Jared. The condom broke, and my daughter was created. My parents, who were great until this point, didn't like that and wanted me to get an abortion. I couldn't bring myself to. I wanted to keep the baby. Of course, my parents told me to pack my stuff and leave the house and their lives. So I did. I went to my friend's house, and his parents took me in. They weren't thrilled, but they said that we all had to help, as a new family member was in the making. In that time, my friend and I started to develop feelings for each other. I had my daughter, and about 2 months later, Jared's brother came back into their lives. He was a recovering heroin addict. As we had the baby, my mother-in-law told him he could not stay with us. Eventually, they let him stay more and more, and he was spending nights until he had a relapse and stole a bunch of stuff. My parents got wind of that. They dug up a bunch of stuff and found out that my mill also fought addiction after an accident she had 15 years ago left her addicted to pain meds. So they called CPS on us, and a whole arse investigation was open. It was a dark time. I thought they were going to take my baby. In the end, they didn't find anything substantial. But them calling CPS on me transformed into a tradition over the years. As it was a small town, every mistake I made got back to my parents. I was half an hour late to pick up due to my job. CPS charges because of neglect. I was out after 10 p.m. with my toddler. This happened twice because we went to family gatherings. CPS. At Christmas, loads of people stayed at Jared's house because it was a big family. CPS because many strange men were there. They eventually stopped it because they were fined for calling them on me unnecessarily. If they had done it more, I think it could have been an offense. The last call was 5 years ago. Eventually Jared and I married when we were 23, and we are quite happy. We worked retail jobs and studied. It took us longer than average to graduate, but we did, with a lot of help from his parents. Jared is now an engineer, and I work as a graphic designer. We were able to afford a big flat and finally moved out of his parents' house. Our life looks normal now. Anyway, a week ago I got a call from my mother, who told me my father was diagnosed with terminal cancer, and that his ultimate wish is to see me and my daughter again. I don't really know what to do. Because while they didn't have to take care of me while I was pregnant, I wished they had at least supported me. And while I get that they were panicking because they thought I was going to be an unfit mother, they made my life hell for 5 years. Relevant comments. OP on if her mother apologized for how they treated her. No. In the phone call, my mother mentioned that they regretted how they treated me. 1 Threadkiller 1. What are your husband's thoughts on potentially reconciling and taking his child around them? You reconciling with your mother and father is your decision. However, they've directly put your child and family in jeopardy on multiple occasions. Definitely get your husband on board before committing to anything about your child. You can go and reconcile with them alone if necessary. Personally, I'd have a hard time accepting them having any connection if I was the father. They did all that horrible crap, knowing they would pass from this earth someday. It would take some monumental effort on their part for me to trust them to meet my child, way more than a phone call, though that could be the start. I agree with other suggestions that you should definitely meet with them first without your child, should you decide to attempt reconciliation. OP, he is not a fan of the idea. He hates them for what they did to us. But he says that if I feel the need to do it, I should. Primera Filho. Do you even know if your father's sickness is true? I wouldn't blame you if you decided to not forgive them. They disowned you and made your life hell. Even if you do forgive them, you need to take it slow letting them back in. Meet them without your daughter in a neutral place first. OP, I have no reason to doubt that. Why else would they want back in? I am definitely having a hard time thinking about forgiveness. OP on, if her daughter would want to meet her parents, she hasn't really ever asked her parents, because her grandparents give her more than enough love. Update post. A little over a month later. Hey, it's me. I wanted to update you on what happened. After some thought, I decided to first meet my parents alone. I wanted to make a decision based on their remorse and development as human beings. And they sadly didn't really change. When I agreed to meet, I also told them it would be without my kid. I don't know why, but they thought they were going to meet her. They had bought presents and all. They were very disappointed, to say it lightly, when I showed up without her. They made no deal to hide it. But we talked. They failed to take any real responsibility for their actions. Every apology began with, "We are sorry if you." When confronted about the CPS calls, they say they were doing what was best for their daughter. I got really mad but tried not to snap. They brought up every mistake I made as a young mother, and that they just thought I was far too young and irresponsible to have a kid. That daughter only turned out good because of luck. After they said that, I laid down money for my meal, stood up, and said, "Well, nothing has changed. You are still the heartless persons that threw me out years ago and made my life hell for 5 years. You will never meet her. She is happy, and she has loving grandparents." They started to freak out, saying that I couldn't withhold their grandchild from them. I just said that you lie in the bed you make. I left and haven't talked to them since. Mails or letters from them are thrown out on the spot. I will eventually explain to my daughter what happened to me and my parents, and will give her the chance to meet them when she is older. But for now, I don't want to deal with their BS. Edit. Guys, thanks for your concerns. But I am non-US. Grandparent rights are not a thing where I come from. Edit 2. I think some of you are confused. I am not asking about advice on whether or not I should give in to my parents' request. That's what my last post was about. It's not unwillingness to reflect. It's a set decision. Also, yes, my daughter is in therapy due to her being traumatized by all that lovely CPS visit that was caused by my parents. So I, in fact, know my child is happy and healthy mentally as well as physically. Edit made at the beginning of the update. Apparently, I have to make this clear. This is just an update post. I have taken my decision. My parents will not meet my daughter until she is older and wants to. More relevant comments. OP on, if her parents would try to pick up their child at school, no, that doesn't happen at her school. The law here is very strict, so the school wants to assure their RSS as good as possible. If they don't know you, you can't pick up the kid. If someone besides us picks her up, I or my husband would need to write an email to the school the day prior or call in the morning. Or else the kids can't leave. I had an accident, and my friend went to pick up the kids, and they weren't let go till after I was called and received a picture of my friend. But thank you very much for the concern. Third story. Parents demand I give my college fund to my unemployed, golden child sister so she can buy a car and go on a vacation because she deserves it, as she had a breakup recently. I 19F have been saving for years for college. Since I was 14, I've done everything from babysitting to cashier jobs, even cleaning houses, to scrape together enough to afford it. My parents never given me a dime, even when I desperately needed help. I once asked them for $20 for school supplies, and they told me I should learn to earn my own money. So, I did. Over the years, I've managed to save about $9,000. It's not a fortune, but paired with the partial scholarship I earned, it's enough to cover my tuition and a decent start for living expenses. College was supposed to be my escape from this house, where I've always felt like an outsider. My parents have always favored my older sister, Amanda 23F, and treated me like an afterthought or worse, like the family scapegoat. Amanda, on the other hand, has had everything handed to her. She's never worked a real job for longer than a few months. According to her, every job she's had was toxic or didn't treat her right, so she'd quit. She dropped out of college in her first semester because it was too much pressure. She spends her days lying around, watching TV, and going out with her friends. Despite all this, my parents treat her like she's made of gold. Things reached a breaking point a few days ago. Amanda just got out of a breakup with her boyfriend of 2 years, something I didn't even know about until recently because we aren't close. My parents have been treating her like she's the victim of some devastating tragedy, walking on eggshells around her and making excuses for her every mood swing. At dinner, my mom brought it up casually, like it was no big deal. She said, "We've been thinking Amanda deserves a break after everything she's been through. A vacation would help her reset and get her mind off the breakup." Then my dad added, "And she really needs a car. She can't keep relying on us to drive her everywhere. She's 23, it's time she has her own." I could feel where the conversation was heading, but I stayed quiet, hoping I was wrong. My mom turned to me with a forced smile and said, "You've been saving so much, sweetie. We think it's time you do something for the family. We want you to give Amanda your savings so she can have the vacation she needs and put a down payment on a car." I just sat there, stunned. When I didn't respond right away, my dad chimed in and said, "It's not like you'll need all that money anyway. Your scholarship is already covering most of your expenses, and if you need anything else, you can always ask us, and we'll help you out." That part really set me off. These are the same people who told me to get a job when I couldn't afford school supplies. The same people who never gave me a single dollar toward my college fund. And now they expect me to believe they'll magically start supporting me if I hand over everything I've worked for. Yeah, no. I told them flat out, "No. I'm not giving Amanda my savings. That money is for college." At first, my mom just blinked at me like I'd said something outrageous. Then she said, "Amanda has been through so much lately. She needs this. It's just money, you'll earn it back. You're young. You have plenty of time to save again." When I didn't budge, my dad's tone got harsher. He called me selfish and ungrateful and said, "Amanda has always supported you, and now it's your turn to support her." Which is laughable because Amanda has never supported me in anything, if anything. She's always treated me like a nuisance. When I still refused, they started making threats. My dad said if I didn't get over this attitude, they'd ground me. He even hinted at physical punishment, something I've endured more times than I can count. My parents have always been heavy-handed when I don't follow their rules. Growing up, I'd get slapped or hit for the smallest things, talking back, not finishing chores on time, even just having a bad attitude. This time, though, I wasn't going to take it. Something inside me just snapped. I told them, "You've never supported me before, and now you want to take the only thing I've worked for. No, I'm done." My dad slammed his hand on the table and yelled, "Don't you dare talk to us like that." My mom started going on about how I was being disrespectful and how I needed to remember my place. But I didn't care anymore. I walked out of the room, went to my bedroom, and started packing a bag. They followed me, yelling the whole time. My dad tried to block the door, saying, "Where do you think you're going? You live under our roof, you don't get to just walk out when things don't go your way." I told them, "Watch me." And I walked right past him and out the front door. Since then, I've been staying at my best friend's house. Her family has been amazing. They've always known my parents were strict. But I don't think they realized how bad it was until I told them everything. My parents have been blowing up my phone nonstop. They keep switching between guilt-tripping me, "How could you abandon us? We're your family," and threatening me, "If you don't come back and apologize, you'll regret it." I haven't responded to any of them. I don't even know what I'd say. I feel guilty for leaving, but at the same time, I feel free. I don't think I can ever go back to that house, but I also don't know what to do next. I've worked so hard for this money and for the chance to go to college. Was I wrong to walk away? Should I try to make peace with my parents, or should I stay away and focus on building my future? Update. First of all, I just want to say thank you to everyone who commented and messaged me after my original post. I was overwhelmed by the support and advice I received. It really helped me see that leaving wasn't just the right thing to do, but the only thing I could do if I wanted to have a future. A lot has happened since I last posted, so here's where I'm at now. After I left my parents' house, I stayed with my best friend for a few days. Her family has been so supportive, but I knew I couldn't stay there forever. I didn't want to impose, and I also wanted to start figuring out my next steps as soon as possible. I called my college's financial aid office to explain my situation and ask if there were any resources available for students in emergencies. I've never felt so anxious making a phone call in my life. I didn't know if they'd believe me or if they'd even be able to help. But to my surprise, they were incredibly understanding. They connected me with a counselor who helped me apply for emergency housing on campus. Within a few days, I had a temporary place to stay, a small dorm room, but it's quiet and safe. I also learned that my scholarship covers not just tuition, but part of my housing expenses as well, which was a huge relief. Between that and my savings, I'll be able to get through my first year of college without having to worry too much about money. While I was sorting all this out, my parents escalated their behavior. They started calling and texting even more, at least 20 times a day, leaving voice calls where they alternated between sobbing and yelling. My dad told me I was tearing the family apart and called me selfish and ungrateful more times than I can count. My mom said I was being brainwashed by outsiders and accused me of abandoning them after everything they've done for me. The last straw came when they showed up at my workplace. I was halfway through my shift when one of my coworkers told me there were 2 angry people asking for me at the front of the store. I knew it was them before I even looked. They started causing a scene, yelling about how I'd betrayed the family and demanding that I go home with them. My manager ended up calling security to escort them out. It was humiliating, and I felt like crawling into a hole. But at the same time, it was the push I needed to take more permanent action. That night, I talked to the counselor my college had connected me with and told them everything. They recommended I file for a restraining order to protect myself. At first, I was hesitant. I kept thinking, what if this makes things worse? What if they hate me forever? But then I realized they already hate me for standing up for myself. I can't keep sacrificing my future to make them happy. With the help of the counselor and a free legal aid service, I went to the courthouse and filed for a restraining order. It was terrifying, but I'm so glad I did it. The judge granted a temporary order almost immediately after hearing about the harassment and the incident at my job. Now, my parents can't contact me directly, and they're not allowed anywhere near my workplace or college. If they violate the order, they'll face serious consequences. Amanda sent me one last message before the restraining order went into effect. It was a long, angry rant about how I've ruined her life, and how I'll regret this when I'm older. She said I was just as heartless as the people who've wronged her in the past. Honestly, it didn't even hurt to read it. It just reinforced what I already knew. I can't have a relationship with her or my parents, not unless they're willing to acknowledge how toxic and unfair they've been, which I know will probably never happen. As for now, I'm focusing on my future. I've picked up extra shifts at work to save even more. But I'm also making time to relax and enjoy this newfound freedom. For the first time in years, I don't have to walk on eggshells or worry about getting screamed at for the smallest mistake. I've already registered for my first semester of classes, and I couldn't be more excited. The scholarship, my savings, and some additional financial aid from my college will cover everything I need: tuition, housing, books, and even some extra for food and other expenses. It's such a huge weight off my shoulders to know I can afford this without relying on anyone else. I won't lie and say it's been easy. There are moments when I miss the idea of having a family, even if my real one was toxic. I still have moments where I feel guilty, like maybe I should have tried harder to make things work. But then I remind myself of all the years I spent being mistreated, ignored, and used. I deserve better than that. To everyone who told me I wasn't wrong for standing up for myself, thank you. Your support gave me the strength to take the steps I needed to protect myself and move forward. I'm still processing everything, but for the first time in my life, I feel hopeful about the future. If anyone reading this is in a similar situation, I want you to know that it's okay to walk away from toxic people, even if they're family. You don't owe them your happiness or your future. I'm finally free, and I'm not looking back. TLDR. My parents demanded my college savings for my unemployed sister's vacation and car. When I refused, they tried to guilt and threaten me into submission. I left the house, got emergency housing through my college, and filed a restraining order after they showed up at my workplace. With my scholarship and savings, I'm starting college soon and living comfortably. I've cut ties with my family and am finally free to focus on my future. Thank you for watching the video. If you are interested in listening to these kinds of stories, we've got more in store for you. Simply subscribe to our channel, hit the like button, and share it with your friends.